tips to improve your photography. So I'll just share my screen. This presentation is about tips to improve your photographs, and it's without needing to be a camera expert. So, you don't have to sort of, do your manual settings. You don't have to Photoshop. You just use your camera and take photos and sort of get some good images that way. And also with getting your photos, good when you first take the photo, then you're sort of not correcting so much when you're photoshopping or doing things like that. Okay. All right. So basically, I'm gonna go through a number of areas. So first, before picking up the camera, then what to do before even pressing the button, and then once you take your photos, getting a little bit adventurous, setting yourself some challenges and some next steps after that. Yep, so before picking up your camera, firstly, decide what you're going to photograph. Think about your location, the theme. So you can pick a particular theme, for example, shop fronts, shoes, flowers. So, decide that before you go out and just focus on taking those photos. And also think about the time of day. So avoid the middle of the day for softer light and shadows. And also think about the occasion as well, because you could be sort of going to sort of a dinner or something. And so you'd be deciding, what do I want to take according to the occasion? And then think about, do you actually want to tell a story? So with the photography club that I go to at the Upper Blue Mountains, we had a presenter present on sort of themes and all that. And he decided to sort of find Monet photos in Sydney. So he would look to try and replicate Monet photos. So I guess that was sort of more of a theme. But then a story can be, sort of such as Margaret's photo of her granddaughter, sort of playing with the doll and what happened there. So there's lots of sort of decisions to make before you actually go out and photograph. Yep. So before pressing button, sort of think of the composition. So you've got so there's the rule of thirds. So you can see a photograph that Margaret took, and when you put the grid up, you can sort of see where she's got, key parts in that rule of thirds. So basically it's splitting the photo up into 3 rows and 3 columns and looking at trying to get your photograph in, the sort of key thing or your main subject in one of those 4 areas. Yep. So with landscapes, avoid dividing in the middle. Aim for either a third of the sky or 2/3 sky to 2/3 or 1/3 earth and water. And also have a main subject as well, so that there's a focal point in the photo. And you'll find that with some of your cameras, you can actually sort of turn on sort of the, sort of rule of thirds as well. So you can actually get a grid up on your screen, which will help you sort of, focus and, sort of work out where to put your subject. But at the same time, rules are meant to be broken as well. So don't get too caught up on it. Okay, so when taking photos, consider symmetry in your photos. So here's something that Frank's taken that is very symmetrical.
Yeah.
So you can look at that for composition. Consider framing your photo. So again, as you can see, Frank's framed his photo here. So here's some sort of other examples of photos that have got frames, especially this one on the right where it's been framed by people. Yep, okay. Consider the lighting. So try to avoid harsh lights and shadows. And here's an example of one when I was at my family reunion. We had a remembrance for my grandmother, and unfortunately, it was in the middle of the day on a hot day in Mackay. So it was pretty hard, sort of to avoid taking photos in those conditions. But it would have been so much better if it had been in the morning, early morning or late afternoon. Um, so consider photographing in the golden hour, which is an hour or two after sunrise or before sunset, or using cloudy light or in full shade. So here's an example of someone who took a photo with an iPhone of people in the shade. So even though it was in the middle of the day, the shade sort of softened the light and sort of made a really nice photo. Sort of use front lighting, golden light for even lighting, and backlighting for silhouettes or dramatic photos. Yep, so detail. So here it's attending to background detail. So if you look at that photo, that was a photo I took for the real estate agent so that they could use it to rent out the property. um, you sort of think that's a reasonable photo, but then you can see that there was a towel in the background, and it would have been better if I'd actually just sort of removed the towel for the photo and then sort of put it back afterwards. And it's really easy to take a photo and then find that detail afterwards. And that was quite hard to Photoshop out, I tried. And here's another example of a photo I took. A friend of mine was trying to get a flat made, and so I think he might have taken this one. I'm not sure, but sort of it would have been so much better if we'd removed all those objects and just placed a couple of sort of ornaments or attractive objects to sort of make the photo look a bit more appealing. Yep, then there's angles. So consider your angles. Don't just stand there and take your photos front on. So look up or get low down. So that's an example of looking up or getting low down. Look down or get up high. So that's another example of someone sort of looking down. I find that people tend to sort of take more photos looking up than sort of looking down and getting up high. I guess it can be harder because you're sort of then photographing the ground. But this one here, which Frank took, is a really good example of, sort of things that you can actually photograph that are sort of on the ground. Yep, okay, so front on. So this is an example of a front on photo. Look at an angle. So that's, I think that was something Sarah took. So she's taken it at an angle to the building. Or tilt your camera 45 degrees. So that's something that Frank took. I think it was on the way to, where was it? Yeah, Cabramatta, actually.
Just like that, yeah.
Yep. Then look at your distance. So take a photo far away. Get close to your subject. Such as a portrait, or even you can even take a photo of part of your subject. So instead of taking the whole house, you can just take part of the house, and that works really well. And also consider unusual objects as well, such as this. I wouldn't have sort of thought of, taking a photo like that, but it's just absolutely beautiful with the detail at the front and the blurry background at the back. Yep. And then sort of studies others' photos that you like as well. So here's some sort of examples of, some photos that others have taken that I've really liked. And also talk to them about how they went about taking their photo and pinch their ideas as well. Yep, and then start to get a bit adventurous. So this is where I'm encouraging you, if you have a camera that allows you to do so, put it in aperture priority. So it's still fairly, it's still easy enough to take photos quickly and to make your adjustments, but you have a little bit more control over the camera. So get off auto, try aperture priority. Your shutter speed will adjust automatically as you change your aperture setting, so there's less mucking around. With apertures, your low numbers such as 1s to 3.5 will blur background areas. And so that photo there would have been taken at a low aperture. And high numbers such as 11 over will keep the background in focus. So there's an example of one of those photos. Yep, and also get a little bit adventurous, do off-center focusing. So, sort of if you have often when you're sort of taking a photo with with automatic focus, you're looking at the object and it focuses on it, and then you move the camera and then it refocuses and the object you want is out of focus. So there's a trick to that. So autofocus on your desired subject. So you press the appropriate button to get the camera to focus. Then before moving the camera, switch your focus to manual. So when you move the camera, it's not going to refocus. And that was something I learned in a video workshop, actually. And then your desired object will remain in focus regardless of where it is in your viewfinder or screen. And that's unless you step forward or back, then that would sort of obviously change the focus. Yep. Then look at some intentional camera movement. So as you press your shutter button, you can move your camera up. So that's an example of that. Or you can try rotating your camera. So that's another example as well. Yep, or you can even zoom your camera in or out as you're taking the photo. So that's an example of a photo taken at Cabramatta. I think it was by Frank, and he must have zoomed it in or out as he was taking it.
Deidre, can I stop for a moment?
Yeah, for sure.
You know that's shown on at the top where you move your camera up or down. Apparently, it's better to move down because then you don't get that blurry top.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember the reason, but apparently it's better to move down instead of up.
Yeah. Okay, I'll change my thing to say move camera down, because I remember when I did it at Centennial Park, I moved it up. But
anyway, try both ways and see which one works.
yeah. Well, it's like what Sarah said before, take a few photos and then you pick the best one and eliminate the others. Yep, okay. Look at reflections.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not sure who took that, but yeah. But, you can sort of, add to your photo by taking a reflection. So this one, the reflection's half the photo, so it's probably broken the rule of thirds, but as we say, rules are meant to be broken. Here's another one. So this one sort of highlights the gutter, but focuses more on the reflection, while the first one, you're sort of looking at the whole photo. And then sort of here's some really unusual reflections, so a bit left of field one. So who would sort of think, oh, I'll look in the windows of a building to get a reflection? Or the second one, what's that? Is that one of those mirrors you have on the side of the road that so that you can sort of see what's coming up the road? So that's a really unusual way of using a reflection, but it works really well. Yep. And then when you've done all of that, set yourself some challenges. So, here's a challenge. Pretend that you're in the old 35mm film days, and that you've only got a limited number of photos you can take. So, sort of go out and decide, I'm only going to take 10 photos. So that, and that will really make you plan your photos, because the whole thing about digital is, I'll just take hundreds of photos, and if I don't like them, I'll delete them. But if you've only got 10, you're really going to plan your shot.
Yeah, good. I like that.
Yeah. Pick a theme. So that's what I said before, before picking up the camera. Limit yourself to a narrow area and take as many photos as you can. So you might say, I'll get some photos of the cat's just, hold on, let me just.
It's just jumped on the
I think he wants food. Hold on. Now I've gone. Lock your cat in the bathroom when you're giving a presentation. Okay, so what was, and I'll just get my notes up again. Yeah. Okay, so limit yourself to a narrow space and take as many photos as you can. For example, you might want to take photos just in your bedroom, just in your kitchen, just in your backyard, on your balcony. So, sort of that will, really help you to focus as well. Now the cat's biting me. You, I will put you in the bathroom if you don't behave. Okay, set some other challenges. Limit yourself to one object and take photos. So, for example, I got my iPhone and took various photos of my camera. Yep, so take it at different angles, distances, lighting conditions and weather. So I remember years ago, sort of at the Sculptures of the Sea, there was a beautiful sculpture of a crystal ball, and I was actually thinking of going down and taking the same object in different weathers, different times of day, sort of raining, sunny, sunrise, sunset in the middle of the day, middle of the night. So, sort of look at doing that, or at home, you could probably even try different backgrounds with an object. Yep. And set yourself a scavenger hunt. So come up with a list, for example, something green, something shiny, food, something with hair, food, etc., and aim to get a photo of everything on that list. And get at least one photo of each list item. Try to get all or most of these items in the same photo, so that can start to be a bit of a challenge. I've got 8 things and I want to try and include all of them in the one photo, or at least some of them. Yep.
That's a big challenge.
Yeah, so I know with the photography club, we've sort of, had some really good scavenger hunts. So, yep. Okay, and now sort of for the next steps. So basically, sort of getting your photo right is probably what I'd call about 25% of the whole photo equation. So the other parts are learning to get away from auto. So learning what your camera can do. And so there's courses at community college, there's YouTube videos and all that that can help you learn about your camera. Then you've got your equipment. So it's lenses, tripods, lights, filters, umbrellas. It's endless. And with your umbrellas and all that, there's, you probably don't have to go out and buy the most expensive thing. You could probably use sheets and all sorts of things that you have in the house to start reflecting light. So that's another part of it. And then, of course, there's photo editing as well, such as Photoshop and Lightroom.
And Picasso.
Yeah. So learning how to sort of use those programs so that when you have a towel sitting over the door in a courtyard, you might be able to Photoshop it out.
Yeah,
Yep. But my conclusion is as Dan Zaffra said, as the saying goes, the best camera is the one that you have with you. So you might have a, sort of multi-$1,000 camera sitting at home, but what point is it if you're out somewhere and you're wanting to take photos? And both these photos here were taken with iPhones on the spur of the moment. So the first one was at my family reunion when a couple of us went for a meal, and then and someone took that with their iPhone. We just happened, I think they lined them up. And then the second one of Luca, do you honestly think he would have sat there like that for very long? Probably not long enough for me to go and find my sort of snazzy camera and get a photo of him. I had to just race, get the iPhone and get a photo of him.
He's just looking at the camera.
yeah. Beautiful eyes.
Yeah. And here's the sources. So these are just some of the places I got these tips from. So a lot of the tips did talk about equipment. They did talk about, settings on cameras. They talked about Photoshop and all that. So I just sort of got a few tips that required none of that.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks.
Useful. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
So have we got homework, Deidre? Is there anything you want us to do?
You could sort of take one of the challenges and give that a go. So the challenge page is limit yourself to 10 photos or take photos of the one object under different conditions, the scavenger hunt.